Hot legs. That first week of school had at least one other huge highlight. I met the girl of my dreams. I mean, it's not like we had some exclusive relationship or anything. She was probably the girl of just about everyone's dreams, but I'm the guy who made friends with her first. Kind of. It happened just before science class, first thing in the morning on the first day of school. I was trying to hustle through the crowded chaos of the hallway, which is hard to do with a limp. As I came around the corner, I saw a girl crouched down on the floor, attempting to gather up 1,000,000 papers, along with the contents of her entire backpack. People were stepping around her and even right over her stuff, but nobody was stopping to help. I figured I'd be late to class if I stopped, but I also figured this girl was going to get stampeded if someone didn't help her to pick up her stuff before the warning bell rang. I knelt next to her and started grabbing lipsticks, packs of gum, and, feminine items. Her dark hair totally covered her face, so I didn't get a look at her until we'd gotten everything back together and stood up. When she looked sideways at me to say thank you, I felt my entire world shift violently on its axis. I'd heard people say that beauty can hit you suddenly, but I had thought it was a figure of speech. This was like kapow. Miss Kapow spoke, and the torrent of words was as overwhelming as her looks. Hey, thanks. Wow, people around here are really serious about getting to class on time. Back in California, nobody would have helped a new kid either, but that's because they'd be worried about not looking cool. But here, geez, I felt like I was in the middle of a riot. Hi, I'm Lindsay Abraham. We just moved here from L.A. Well, not really L.A., the O.C. technically, but close enough, right? And you're... I was speechless. The neurologist would tell you I have slow processing as a late effect, which is another way of saying that people can really make me look dumb if they're quick talkers. And apparently Lindsay Abraham was like an intercontinental talking missile. By the time my brain worked its way through her whole train of thought, I must have looked like a total goon. It's Jeffrey Alper from New Jersey. Oh, good God, I thought. Did I really just say that? She giggled. Well, hello, Jeffrey Alper from New Jersey, and thanks again for being the one person who stopped to help. The bell rang. Oh, now I've made you late to class. It's okay, my class is right here. I hope you don't think our whole school is rude. Someone would have stopped to help, but, first day and all. Lindsay Abraham smiled at me. Wow, do people have white teeth in California or what? It's all right. Someone did stop to help. By the way, are you one of those people who always see the good in everybody? I try. We looked at each other, and for that instant we were equal. I don't think she knew what to say either. Of course, she recovered first. You said your class is this one, right? She squinted at her schedule, which was partly crumpled in her hand and had a big sneaker footprint across it. Science with, Lorenzano? Yeah, but watch out going in. He's famous for getting mad when people come in late. Lindsay smiled again. I could get used to that smile. I thought, on second thought, no, I'd probably never get used to it. I liked it, though, a lot. Come with me, she said. I owe you one. Is that the back door of this room? Okay, you hit that one, and I'll go in the front. Then she turned on her heel and barged into the room like it was a Hollywood party and she was on the red carpet. I headed for the back door. What else was I going to do? Miraculously, Mr. Lorenzano was nowhere in sight. Kids were grabbing seats for their friends, but there was still a totally empty table for 4 at the back of the room, so I kind of eased my way over there, hoping nobody would notice I was late. I sat in one chair and pulled the chair next to mine away to save space for Tad. Meanwhile, in front of the room, Lindsay was the star attraction. It was like a movie scene or something. Everybody's conversations just totally stopped as she walked across the floor. Nobody was going to notice me now. She smiled at the closest guy, this chess geek named Connor, and said, Is this Mr. Lorenzano's room? He just swallowed a few times and nodded. Thanks, she said. I'm new here, and this school is so confusing. At my old school in California, we didn't have all these inside hallways. It was more like... Mr. Lorenzano popped out a little back room that lab classrooms always have and said, Seats, everybody. We have science to do. Lindsay looked around for an empty place, and my table was her only option. I couldn't believe my luck. She glided over, gestured toward the chair directly across from me, and raised one eyebrow. Be my guest, I said. Wow, was that a slick line or what? Be my guest. So suave, so smooth. This girl's heart would be mine by third period. As if. Lindsay sat down and the smell of her perfume wafted across to me. I was hypnotized. Mr. Lorenzano started taking attendance, and when he got to her name, I repeated it in my mind. Lindsay Abraham. Such a perfect name. 5 syllables that rolled right across the tongue. Lindsay Abraham. I wondered how much it would hurt to get those 14 letters tattooed on my arm. Unfortunately, I realized if somebody wanted to get all that onto my bicep, they'd have to write pretty small. But maybe just the initials, L.A., and she was from there, too? It was perfect. Now, if only I didn't... Jeffrey Alper? Mr. Lorenzano was calling my name, his lower lip already curling into a sneer of distaste, and everybody was staring at me, including Lindsay. Apparently this wasn't the first time he'd said it, but this wasn't my usual spacing out problem. This was like a hormonal emergency. Lindsay grinned. I thought I might pass out. Here, I said weakly. Mr. Alper, I don't know what kind of attention your 7th grade science teacher demanded, but in this classroom you will be silent and attentive at all times. We'll be working with dangerous, flammable... Lindsay was grinning at me. Her lips were lush and perfect, sparkling and glossy. I just wanted to stare at them and tell, "Is that understood, Mr. Alper?" Absolutely, I replied automatically. I mean, I had no clue what was supposed to have understood, but I didn't think asking this guy to repeat himself would help. Just then, the classroom door opened and Tad wheeled himself over to my table. He looked at me, then at Lindsay, who had stopped grinning and was looking coolly at him. Then he looked back at me and kind of smirked down into his book bag as he took out his laptop computer. Tad and I are allowed to type everything. A lot of cancer survivors do fine in school, but Tad and I both have tons of nerve damage, so we get special accommodations. As Tad says, we're kind of like honorary speds. Both of us have really horrendous handwriting because our hands aren't very coordinated, so voila, we get laptops. Other kids are always jealous of our laptop privileges, and once in a while someone mutters something about it. When we were in 7th grade, this one kid named Tim said it wasn't fair, and Tad just about lost his mind right in the middle of social studies. He was all like, "Not fair? Oh, I'm sorry I get this lovely laptop computing device when all you get is the ability to walk, control your hands, and know you'll probably survive until your 18th birthday. Then the kid was going, I didn't mean, but Tad wasn't done yet. While the whole class watched in horror, he put his hands through the metal support braces on the arms of his wheelchair and forced himself to stand up. Then he took a shaky little step to the side, gestured toward a chair, and said, "Why don't you take a turn with a laptop? You can even have my seat." The teacher was totally pale and panicked. She said, Tad, why don't you just... I'm sure Timothy wasn't trying to, Tim looked like you wanted to die on the spot, but Tad still wasn't finished. He said, "What, Timmy? Don't you want to trade places anymore? You could be a partial cripple instead of a..." At that point, Tad had to stop to catch his breath because it's really hard for him to support himself. I rushed around a couple of desks to get to Tad and tried to help him back into his seat. This brought on one of his alarming coughing fits. But as he sank down into his chair, I'm pretty sure everyone in the room noticed that a couple of the coughs were really the end of his sentence. Pleat. Head. I knew he had it 10 times worse than I did with the late effects, and I knew a lot of people didn't like the way he never, ever held anything back. But at moments like that, I always wished I could have even a 10th the nerve that Tad had. Okay, so now you know the deal with the laptops. Anyway, Tad got his booted up, and then just as Mr. Lorenzano launched into a part 2 of his amazing lab safety speech, my computer pinged. Lindsay looked for a moment, but then went back to staring out the window. Apparently, she wasn't a huge lab safety fan. Mr. Lorenzano gave me a warning glare, but didn't come over from behind his big old slate-top demonstration table in front of the room. Science teachers never come out from behind the big table. I looked down at my screen and saw that Tad had IM'd me. Tattitude. "Wow, Jeff, who's the babe?" Dangerous Pie. "Your mom." Tattitude. "No, the one 3 feet away from you." Dangerous Pie. "Oh, that's Lindsay Abraham. I had her flown in from California for my personal amusement." You can look at her if you want. Tattitude. Sweet. But have you talked to her yet? Dangerous Pie. Uh-huh. We're really close. Tattitude. Intro me? Dangerous Pie. After class. Tattitude. Duh. Just then I noticed that a large shadow had fallen over my screen. I couldn't even bear to look up as Mr. Lorenzano said, Thaddeus Ibsen? Lindsay Abraham. Lindsay? Thaddeus. There. You've been introduced. Now can I teach some science? Wow. Looked like this is going to be my year for unusual teachers. For the rest of the period, I totally tried to concentrate, but it was impossible. I kept thinking about how Lindsay's legs were just inches from mine under the table. And I know that's totally inappropriate. And you probably think I'm some kind of sick, perverted horn dog. But hey, it's the truth. During our brief but meaningful 40-minute relationship, I had noted that A, Lindsay was wearing a skirt, and B, she had hot legs. Even if I could have torn my brain away from the new love of my life, it wasn't like I could have ignored the distraction of Tad. I turned off the sound on my computer, but he was still IMing me nonstop. I kept whispering for him to cut it out, but he's not very, directable. And every time I looked at him, he rolled his eyes from me to Lindsay and back over and over again. It looked like he was having some kind of spasm. Fortunately, Lindsay didn't notice because she had turned halfway around in her chair to face Mr. Lorenzano, which allowed me to add the back of her neck to my list of perfect things about Lindsay Abraham. After about 1,000,000 years, the warning bell rang and Tad wheeled himself out. He always got to go either at the warning bell or 3 minutes after everybody else, because it was hard for him to get through the halls if they were full of people. When the rest of us got dismissed, Lindsay looked right at me and said, Jeff? Wow. She remembered my name. Unfortunately, she was probably so mortified by Tad that she would never speak to either of us again. Yeah? What was that about? What was what about? If this girl didn't think I was a complete moron yet, she was getting pretty close. You know, why did the teacher introduce me to your friend Thad? It's Tad, and he introduced you because, here's where a smarter guy would have just shut up. But for some reason, whenever I'm under pressure, I have this awful habit of telling the truth. We were IMing about you. I could feel a brilliant crimson blush spreading across my cheeks as Lindsay cocked her head to the side and chewed on a lock of her gorgeous hair. Oh, she broke into a grin. Were you saying anything good? Now the blush was hitting my neck. My ears felt red hot too, and I was sweating. No? No? You mean you were saying something bad? That's not nice. She wagged her finger back and forth at me like preschool teachers do when they want to show a kid that pegging the teachers with blocks is a no-no. But the grin was still there. No, we weren't saying anything bad about you either. We were just, I think you're nice, that's all. She giggled a little. You just told Tag that you think I'm nice, huh? I'm so sure. For real, and it's Tad. That was it. She had to think I had the approximate IQ of lettuce by this point. Before I could dig myself any deeper into the pit of conversational stupidity, the late bell rang. See what you did, Jeff? First you go writing about me all over town, and now you made me late to class again. Well, there's only one thing to do. What? Walk me to my next class. That way I can use the new student excuse, and you can be my new student escort. Nobody ever gets marked late if they're showing the new girl around. She grabbed her stuff and headed out the door. I was still kind of paralyzed by this whole conversation. Partly it was the slow processing thing, but mostly it was the Lindsay effect. When she hit the hall, Lindsay turned to me and said, Come on, Jeff, unless you think a more I-am-worthy babe is going to stroll along any minute. As I scrambled to catch up to her without tripping over my weak right foot, she punched me in the arm. By the way, she said, there are 2 things you really ought to know. First of all, classroom windows are very reflective. If you're not careful, someone sitting across from you might be able to look at them and read your computer screen. Oh, geez. What's the other thing? You're cute when you blush. Sometimes it's hard to know whether I should curl up in a ball and die of embarrassment or give myself a hearty high five.